Hi everyone, my name is Pierre Cornelou. I am Trade Development Advisor at the Business France office in Johannesburg. And Business France mandate is to facilitate the relationships between French and foreign companies. And I am specialized in the tech and services sector in South Africa. Today we're going to discuss about the artificial intelligence in Africa. And for this, I will be joined by Dr. Nick Bradshaw. Hi, Nick.
Hi Pierre, really nice to be here and nice to be able to talk to you about this exciting opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today for this podcast. And Nick, I will first let you introduce yourself to the people listening and watching this interview.
Thanks, Pierre. Yeah, I mean, I guess my story. I'm an English person. I'm originally from the UK, living in South Africa through marriage. So that's why I'm based here now for the last 11 years. But I've been in the technology industry for I don't know 25 years now, in a variety of roles, ranging from project management through to entrepreneur, working in the enterprise as well. But mainly the constant theme has been working with complex technologies and helping large companies get to grips with deploying these technologies and also building competency and skills around using these technologies in a business environment. So my journey brought me to South Africa, and there's a very interesting opportunity here, not only in South Africa but in the broader African market. And there's a lot going on with artificial intelligence and related 4IR technologies, and hopefully we'll share some of that information with your listeners and viewers today.
Thank you so much, Nick. And to start this conversation, I'd like to start with kind of a broad question. So we know that in many areas related to tech, South Africa is one of the most advanced markets on the continent. Is it something that remains true when we are talking about AI?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've done a lot of mapping over the last 3.5 years. The company I created, AI Media, we broadly do market analysis, consulting, advisory, and we also run AI Expo Africa and Africa's only 4IR trade publication. So we've been looking at this for the last 3.5 years. I think it's fair to say that, I guess because I'm based in South Africa, I see a lot more of these companies. But I mean, broadly, our analysis shows that South Africa has a very healthy contingent of AI, 4IR startups, if you want to call them that, and also opportunities for companies to supply in this area. But obviously you've got East Africa, West Africa, and North Africa, who really certainly over the last 3 or 4 years have also started to embrace this massive change, and some of those technologies and opportunities are flowing into those regions as well. So yeah, definitely, Southern Africa, South Africa is a good place to start that journey.
Okay. And related to that, what are the top 5 tech sectors in demand in Africa and especially in South Africa today?
Yeah, we did a buyer survey last year to our community, and we were mainly asking enterprise customers what they felt that were the needs of their business over the next sort of 1 to 2 years. So we did the survey last year, so this information is fairly current. So really, most large companies, and when I say large companies, I'm talking about the banks, the insurance companies. You start looking at retailers, manufacturers, or any organisation that has to interact either with another business or with customers. They started their journey with process automation. So RPA, robotic process automation, has been a key need in this region. The other interesting technology that's been in strong demand is companies that are working with chatbots and conversational interfaces. So where you've got the ability for the process to be augmented in some way with a chatbot, or maybe there's some automation to and language understanding, language processing, language generation around maybe email, processing of email, the processing of those kinds of interactions with customers. So that's definitely a key area. And then big data analytics and insights, that was like rated the number 1 area in terms of need. And then looking more specifically at companies then wanting to solve a very specific problem, either using a kind of machine learning application or deep learning application, depending on what that problem was. And then also some some other domains like IoT and smart devices, and then finally a general move to cloud. I mean, obviously, some of these services are being delivered through the cloud. So those are sort of top 5 or 6 areas that we're seeing are in demand here in this region.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that some big companies have been moving to the cloud, and we can see data centers are growing in South Africa, in Southern Africa right now. So it means that there is a real demand for this type of solution here in South Africa. And could you give us a few examples of companies that are based in South Africa and that are using this type of techs now?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at people on the supplier side, I mean, there's some well publicized enterprise case studies, with the banks, Standard Bank, Nedbank. They've all been experimenting and deploying with these technologies, and you can search those as you wish on the internet. But yeah, I mean, if you look at companies specifically, a company in South Africa, FinChatBot, they've been involved in our community for the last 3 years. They've been tackling this market. They're also branching into other industry verticals like retail, and then also branching into other countries as well. So, there's companies here that are looking at these technologies, growing their business around these technologies, and then also looking to take those technologies and service offerings to other domains. Obviously, there's other companies as well that are using what you might call third-party RPA products. If you look at companies like Blue Prism, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, WorkFusion, that they've actually built up a partner ecosystem, some of which are also present in the Africa region and in South Africa. And then obviously you've got the bigger players like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and IBM. Obviously, they have their platforms. Arguably, Amazon, AWS, and Microsoft probably leading the charge, very closely followed by Google in that respect. And then you've got some of the what you might call other platform players like SAP and Oracle, Salesforce. Even they've got they're bringing these technologies like artificial intelligence into their platforms. Maybe you're not using it directly in front of you, hands-on, but it may be driving some of the activity in the background. And then you've got lots of newer emerging companies that are starting to look at natural language processing, natural language generation. The company from the UK last year that we used ourselves here at AR Expo, using digital avatars which are generated from text to actually create a video. It's a company called Synthesizer in the UK, and so there's a real mix. There's a mix of local companies. There's a mix of existing traditional large enterprise type companies, and then you've obviously got startups and companies which are then looking to come into the market as well. So yeah, plenty of examples. And if you go on our website, you can see some of the vendors which are part of our community.
Okay, and so what type of advice could you give to the French companies who are looking at the South African market now, like the challenge that they could face, or the opportunities for them, like the advice of a specialist for this market?
I mean, look, I mean, we've had a relationship with the French embassy in South Africa and Business France for the last 3 years, and obviously we've kind of grown together with you guys and seen, how you're trying to encourage French companies to come here, and also helping companies here find markets abroad. So, I mean, some of the advice I would give to companies that are wanting to get into the market here, not only in South Africa and Southern Africa, but the rest of Africa, is obviously work with Business France and the embassy to understand the market. They can put you in contact with people like us, we can set up a Zoom call and we can have a conversation with you. I think one of the observations that we also noticed that, 3.5 years ago when we started doing the research here, is I think there was a lot of excitement and hype back in sort of 2017, early 2018, and now there's very much reality. So now is the time, if you've been thinking about this market, to come and have a look. The point of entry is relatively low cost. Obviously, a lot of people now very happy to explore a market virtually. We run our virtual trade show, which any of the French companies are welcome to join through yourselves, or we can deal with you directly. But I think some of the other advice I would give is that, there's a lot of companies. It's not just about your product and your service. It's also about some of the consulting that you can do around the product and the offering. So a lot of companies here have told us that, if they're looking at deploying technologies which are leveraging algorithms, for example, or, maybe it's a black box, they want to understand what's going on inside. They need advisory around transparency, ethics, privacy, accuracy, bias. These other topics around the use of these new technologies are just as new as the technology itself, and there aren't any global standards. So I think when we look at some of the hot topics for this year that we're starting to pick up on, ML ops or AI ops. So how can a company start building these applications itself? How can it start taking its legacy data or its current data sets and abstracting value from that? And it may be that there are companies that in France that can help with that. And then what kind of relationship do they want to have? Do you need to work directly here? Can you work remotely? Can you work through a partner ecosystem? And again, those are areas where we can also help and recommend partners if vendors are looking for partners. But the key thing is customers here are hungry for knowledge. They want to understand what they can do with their with these new technologies. So I think if any French company is wanting to come into this market, those would be some key things to think about. For sure.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. And yes, as you mentioned, we would be a point of entry for them, so we can present the market and we can introduce them to you, so you can give them more information about the market and about the event. But we'll come back to that a bit later. Just a few more questions before that. Moving on to the next topic, it's more about the institutions. What role are the institutions playing around AI in South Africa? I'm talking about the government, maybe also the universities that are quite famous here in South Africa. What role are they playing?
Yeah, that's a good question, Pierre. I mean, at the end of the day, the landscape is it's like a community of communities in many respects. So, no one institution holds all the information. So I think traditionally the landscape, the artificial intelligence landscape, evolved here broadly from a technical, academic, and research perspective. Some pretty big technical communities and academic communities existing already, like the deep learning in Indaba. That's obviously heavily focused around the student community, undergrad, postgrad, research, postdoc community, and obviously that was a very established community when we started our own journey. What we found was that there wasn't a business community talking about final products and services that you can actually buy and supply in the region. So when you look at the community landscape, it is made up of, as you say, governments. It's made up of universities. It's made up with business. It's also made up with non-government organizations, like if you look at the ITU and the AI for Good movement, specifically around the SDGs. You've then got accelerators and tech hubs all around Africa. And then you've got a lot of other, some of them are charities even, not-for-profits that are working on specific themes like women in AI, or you've got some specific focus around research. So, it is quite a busy partner ecosystem. If you look at the government level, obviously a lot of governments now know that these technologies are potentially transformative for society and the economy, and to make people's lives hopefully better. And you're seeing some of the African governments now publishing their strategies or in the process of developing their AI strategy. So Kenya was the first country to publish its strategy in 2019, which also included blockchain. And then you've got Tunisia, very advanced in its thinking now around its own national strategy. You're seeing big contingent of tech investment happening in West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria specifically. And then you've got like Data Science Nigeria, which is one of the largest not-for-profit training entities that's looking to train 1 million Nigerians in data science and related technologies. So I think I present the broader picture because it's not just government working on its own on these things. It is a mixture of players. Obviously, there's sort of trade associations, a bit like ourselves, that are also playing a role. And then there's quite a few organisations outside of Africa, the Africa region, that are looking to fund the development of the ecosystem. So there's some very interesting things happening out of Kenya, which is funded by the Canadian and Swedish governments around AI for development and putting in frameworks for how you can build a skills base from the bottom up. And then you've got organizations, like the Africa Diaspora Network. There's a lot of people in North America in the tech space who've been very successful, and now they're looking to give back to the region. So it's a big landscape. I think we've mapped in excess of 160 players, and there's a lot going on.
Okay, yeah, and you mentioned how the strategy was to build skills, and here, especially on the South African market and the universities, is there a change plan on the curriculum, or are there new specific training programs that are developed here in South Africa?
Yeah, I think Stellenbosch University's been sort of taking a lead. Certainly, I think on I think they released a new master's program. I think some of the face-to-face elements of that last year when they launched it obviously changed because of COVID. But there's definitely now at the university level a big focus on AI and data science. You've got the Centre for Artificial Intelligence Research, which is actually broadly a virtual institute, but it's made up of members of each of the individual universities in South Africa. You've then got the Cirrus AI initiative, which is being run out of Wits University, and they're doing some very interesting things there around how intellectual property from the university system can gain funding, so that we can take ideas from the university research bench into the wider industry and get those ideas out into wider society, wider industry. So there is a lot going on. I think also, and I can't quite remember the final details, but there are some changes happening in the national education curriculum here in South Africa around robotics, education for young people, specifically in the government curriculum for all school children. But I'm not so versed in the finer detail of those changes. But they're in process at the moment.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you, Nick. And Nick, you probably know that some people mention how AI could be also dangerous. First for the employment, which is a relevant subject here in South Africa, with an employment rate of around 30%. And they also mentioned some ethical concern as well. And I just wanted to have your opinion on that.
Yeah, as I say, I think we have to look at the bigger picture when you look at the impact of technology on jobs. And when I say big picture, I'm talking like the last sort of 150 years. If you look at, say, America 150 years ago, middle 1850s, most of the jobs were agriculture and, horses, plows, people using hands to sow seeds and gather crops. Obviously, mechanization and automation has really impacted farming to the point where what was 65% or 75% of the population involved in that is now down to, I think, like 5%. Now, very in the same way, artificial intelligence based or 4IR based technologies will have a similar impact. They will remove a certain degree of repetitive, what you might call, I use the word mundane as perhaps it's not necessarily the right word, but repetitive tasks that can be easily replicated by an agent or a piece of software that may in part be powered by artificial intelligence technologies is going to happen for sure. And it's already happening at the moment, as you say, robotic process automation, letting software run your processes, and then having a human in the loop is really where we need to look at these technologies. So humans working alongside these technologies so that the human can become more productive in other areas. So rather than making outbound sales calls, maybe you can get a bot to do that, and then the incoming reply is then handed off to a human when the intention is positive. Equally, if you've got a call center and you want to retain customers, when you detect negative sentiment, you can hand that off to a human, and then a human can be in the loop. So I think we have to look differently at how we work with these technologies. But yes, there will be a short-term, certainly an impact in some industries where the jobs are replaced, but at the same time, it will create a whole new set of jobs, things around ethics, creative thinking, design thinking, employing people to manage the change programs, the ongoing change programs, people who can understand how to build these technologies. If you're a data scientist or someone who's got some experience in deploying these technologies, you're in big demand right now, and it's a global marketplace. So no longer are you constrained by just having to work in Cape Town for a company in Cape Town. You can work in Cape Town and be working for a company in the UK or Singapore or San Francisco. And COVID has helped everybody realize that is much more viable. So if you look at the impact of COVID and the impact of this technology and a new way of working, we've kind of accelerated ourselves forward in a much faster timescale than we would have done if something like COVID hadn't come along. So I think it's a combination of factors. I think in the media, you're seeing less of that kind of Terminator scenario news, which was very common 2, 3, 4 years ago. I think you're actually starting to see a lot more positive stories about how this technology can help disease, cancer. If you look at some of the work that was done with DeepMind on, how proteins fold and how that can be used for drug discovery, we're going to make a lot of positive breakthroughs, which are going to create a whole new set of jobs or more jobs in certain domains where maybe there's only a small number of people at the moment. So, this field is going to expand. Businesses are demanding these skills. They're demanding these technologies. So a whole new raft of startup companies will also emerge. Companies that came on the scene only last year didn't exist 2 years ago, 3 years ago when we started AI Expo Africa. There's a whole raft of new companies that have emerged. So and I think in another 3 years we'll see a whole new raft of companies that are taking some of these technologies, packaging them up and making them much more accessible. And I think that's one of the challenges, is how do you scale your business with these technologies, which are incredibly complicated, to a broader audience. And I think that's where there's a key opportunity.
True. Yeah. So it's more about finding the right way to use these technologies to enhance productivity, and also these kind of tools will bring new jobs and will actually create jobs and create opportunities. So we have to trust this kind of evolution in technology.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's never, technology change at this scale is never necessarily easy to comprehend. You can't look that far into the future. But if we look at the advent of some of the other technologies that caused a big leap in our ability to do new things as humans, this certainly is one of those changes. And I think people are seeing a lot more positive in that now, whereas maybe 3 or 4 years ago they were seeing a lot more negative in that now. And clearly applications like application to crime and surveillance and people and we have to get that right. Those technologies in those use cases have to be accurate, they have to be transparent, and they have to be deployed very carefully if you're going to do that at scale.
Well, thank you for your answers, Nick. And now to conclude, I just wanted to talk about something. So you mentioned during this interview that you are the founder of the AI Media Group, and you mentioned also the AI Expo that you created, and on which I had the pleasure to work with you these last 2 years. And could you give us more information about this event for our French entrepreneurs watching this interview, and to develop a bit about this event?
Sure. Well, we've run the event in 2018 and 2019 as a face-to-face event, and obviously that was very successful. But then in 2020, we had to take the event online. Obviously, that was a new concept for everybody, but actually the format that we created allowed companies to join virtually through the French pavilion in the case of the French companies. And it was a very convenient way for companies to present their brand, their products, their services through the French pavilion, which is a virtual pavilion, in a very low cost way, less than the cost of a return ticket for one person. So, basically we tried it last year. It was very successful. And we're running it again this year, mainly because, again, we have some of the uncertainties around COVID and travel and large events, restrictions around large events. So, again, we're going to run the same format. The ability for us our goal is really to connect you to buyers of your technology. So if there's any French entrepreneurs, French tech companies listening to this presentation, then the opportunity for you is you can take a virtual booth, and you can present your products and services through the French embassy, and then we put you in front of thousands of delegates that come through the show over the 3 days. There's a speaking program, there's a networking area, there's a social program, we've got a poster zone for universities, and we've got a 4-track speaking program. And then the whole show is wrapped up and runs for another 30 days as an on-demand archive. So essentially 3-day live show, 7th, 8th and 9th of September, and then 30-day on demand. And you can learn more at aiexpoafrica.com.
Thank you very much, Nick. Yes, I will put the link at the end of this video. I will also put my contact details. So for anyone who's interested, you can contact me, and I will give you the information and transfer your contact to Nick if you're asking for more information about this event. Once again, thank you very much, Nick, for joining me for this interview. It was a real pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks, Pierre, and best wishes to the French team this year and everything you do. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.